Welcome to the Predictive Playbook. We're at Manny's Pub today on Monday, April the 19th, 2021. I'm your host, John Ryan. I'm pleased to be here with Rob Veno, who's one of my regular guests. We're expecting Tony Finn to join us as well. The rumor is that he forgot his wallet and took an Uber and he's stranded. We don't know. If you know anything in the chat room, let us know. And making his debut, Adam from Top Flight Sports. He's also on sportsmemo.com. Welcome to the show, Adam and Rob. How your day's going today?
Well, thanks for having me on, John. I appreciate it. So far so good. I'm still in Florida, so I can't complain. And just hopefully ready to cash a few tickets tonight.
That sounds good. There's everybody. I didn't realize that I had the betting system of the day up there. But hey, Rob. Yeah.
Good afternoon, John. Hey, nice call on the Red Sox this morning. Patriots Day win. Nice and easy.
Yeah, that was about time.
Yeah, they got runs early and often, and Eovaldi took it the rest of the way. Looked pretty good for Boston. Didn't quite see who won the marathon yet, but I would imagine it was somebody from Kenya or Ethiopia, one or the other. But yeah, nice to have 11 o'clock baseball.
Yeah, I'm going to act like Teddy here. With all due respect, the marathon was canceled to October the 11th. I would have never known that had I not read it. So that's not busting on you. But you know, they were running it. But you're right. It would have been one of those leaders that would have blown away the field, and that's usually the winner of the Boston Marathon.
That's why I didn't know who won.
And plus, we didn't bet on it. I mean,
yeah. A good day, though, for the Red Sox. Big win off of the doubleheader sweep yesterday, right? White Sox got the best of them twice and bounced back, like I say, early and often here today. A couple of ex-Dodgers providing a lot of fireworks for that team. Alex Verdugo, Kike Hernandez doing a job over there.
I'm shocked Kike is doing as well as he's doing in the leadoff role. Because he's like a lower OPS guy than you usually see in a leadoff spot. And then going from not really playing every day in LA, so more of a utility platoon type guy. So I've always liked him as a player. So it's nice to see him doing well in that spot because it was a big sort of step up in responsibility for him.
Yeah, for sure. I'll ask you this question before we move on to the NBA because there's probably a couple marquee games we want to talk about there. The Yankees. Okay, is the manager in trouble?
I think so. You're always in New York. You're always in trouble. I mean, the first sign of sort of things not working, I think, in a market like New York, you're always in trouble. And I don't know if it'll be Boone, but someone will go. I don't know if it seems like Boone, it makes the most sense. Unless they turn it around quickly, but it's tough to tell. I just know that, if you're going to get an overreaction, it's usually in a market like New York. So I would say if they don't turn it around quickly, that they'll do something.
Well, if they were in the same division as the Dodgers, they'd be 7.5 games out. But what do you think, Rob? Do you think they just keep it status quo after 15 games, but they are 5-10 and 5 games behind the dreaded Boston Red Sox? In their eyes, dreaded. I mean, you can see. I'm wearing that for Patriots Day though, mostly.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't play Tampa Bay 8 times, they're 4-3. I mean, it's 1-7 against the Rays this year has been obviously a nemesis for them. It's always interesting, John, because if you take a 5-10 string and drop it in the end of June, nobody notices like they do now. Beginning of the season, it's a big deal. I know Aaron Boone had a closed-door meeting a couple of days ago with his team. He wasn't happy, trying to light a bit of a spark. But they've had trouble with Tampa. And for them, I guess, it's almost like in college basketball when you hit the postseason and you're just happy to get outside your conference and play somebody non-conference. The Yankees will be happy to play anybody other than Tampa because Tampa hasn't been good unless they're playing the Yankees. So it's worked both ways.
Well, I was going to say that's really concerning because I don't think this Rays team is all that good this year. They're definitely not as good as they were last year. So
Yeah, it's been interesting. We're going to see where they go from here. I'll say this. If you're betting them, every single day. The Yankees, you're certainly a lot lighter because you get no cheap prices with the Yankees. At least the Dodgers are cashing tickets for people, but the Yankees at that price, just no bargain. And I think yesterday a lot of people thought Garrett Cole. I in fact thought Garrett Cole would, maybe stop. That's what he's paid for, right? He's paid to stop the losing streak and turn it around, and it just didn't happen. They're not hitting right now. Some of those hitters are overrated too, guys. I mean, Sanchez, Stanton, these guys are overrated as far as pure hitters are concerned. They're boom or bust, hit a home run or don't do anything. So they've got a lot of that running through that. If it wasn't for DJ LeMahieu, they'd probably have almost all of that running through that lineup.
Definitely.
And that's the problem with that. I've been beating a dead horse on this show for weeks, and the uppercut is going to go the way of the dinosaur eventually. And I don't know if this is the beginning of it or not, but you only have one intersection with an uppercut and the direction of the ball. And some of these pitchers can throw 99, 100 with movement, making it even more difficult to barrel the ball up. So if I was an owner, I certainly would never be looking to pay a guy $20 million for 40 home runs and a 205 batting average. I'd rather have 18 homers, 82 RBIs, and a 288 batting average. What's the theme in Moneyball, the movie? On base percentage. Is that going to go away because everybody decides to hit home runs? I don't think so.
It's really funny. It's just everything's kind of cyclical, right? And if you go back a decade and you think of, I'll just use the Giants as an example. That Giants team that won 3 World Series in a 6-year span, and that was really a pitching and defense type team. They didn't have a ton of guys that hit just an obnoxious number of home runs. There was a lot of good hitters on the team, and all of a sudden there was a shift from what they were doing to this just sort of launch angle. We're going to play for the home run. The Dodgers Astros playoff series comes to mind. I'm going to blank on the year, but it was the World Series, the Dodgers Astros World Series, when I think there was a game that was 13-12, right? And the balls were just flying out of the park. And I think other teams started to emulate, then the analytics people come in and, show some numbers that say, we're better off having to hit 220, 230 if you're hitting the ball at the ballpark. And it's just, it will come full circle to where the pitchers adapt. And then you're going to see teams start to, like you were saying, value getting on base or contact or hitting the ball, I think the big one that's coming is, guys being able to beat the shift, right?
Absolutely.
Guys that can go up there and hit and beat whatever, because there's a shift for basically every batter now. And I think you're right. I think we'll start to see teams get tired. There will be teams will get tired of losing because they can't move a runner over, or their team batting average is 220, and then but it's going to take a team winning, playing that style to get other teams to sort of do it, I think. So
that's got to happen, because that drives me nuts, because Rob and I come from the old school, and speaking for Rob and speaking for Tony, I'm not sure what kind of battery he was back in his day. I think they used wood bats, but seriously, if I'm hitting a ball up the middle, that's how you're trained to hit. You hit a grounder, blistering up the middle, base hit. If there's a guy standing there and all of a sudden they're playing me to pull, then why can't these guys just shoot it through the gap that's 20 yards wide?
Yeah, professional hitter, you would think, right?
I mean, is there an unspoken rule that you're a coward or you're a wimp, or it's against baseball protocol to hit it through the vacant area that was left by the defense? I don't get it. All right, I'll start. I won't rant.
There were two real good examples of it yesterday, John. Pavin Smith for the Diamondbacks. they put a shift on him in the Washington game yesterday, and he takes it. And the pitcher's responsible too, right? When you're in a shift, the pitcher has to stay inside middle. You can't pitch outside to a left-handed pitcher or to a left-handed batter, excuse me. And they went outside, and Pavin Smith went with the pitch, put it down the left field line, 2-run double. And then you saw Eric Hosmer do it yesterday against the Dodgers, slapped it right down the third base line into an empty left field corner. So, these guys are capable. It's interesting. Adam brought up the 2017 World Series where it was all power. The next year it went the other way because the Red Sox team that won the World Series was all about on-base percentage and batting average. I think they were a plus over 400 on-base percentage team. Yep. So they certainly did it the other way with pure contact.
But you know what? They went the other way too, and that's the part that is missing now. They went with the pitch and hit it opposite field, and it worked, right?
It does work, John. It does work. Like I said, it takes one team to do it and then turn the whole thing around again because people will see it. But, it is frustrating watching guys, left-handed hitters, try and pull outside pitches through 7 people in a shift and just ground out. So,
like in the NFL, if you had a tight end that has only caught 2 passes all season and you decide as a defense you're not going to cover that guy. That's the analogy, right? I mean, and as an offensive coordinator, you see that enough. Aren't you going to take a shot? Well, speaking of football, let's move on to the NBA. Where we have the Western Conference love affair with the Phoenix Suns, and they got hammered by the NBA scheduler. They have a 5-game road trip that starts tonight in Milwaukee, goes to Philly next, then it goes to Boston, then it goes to the Knicks, Nets, and then they go home to play the Clippers. So 6 games in a row here against arguably playoff contending teams. The Knicks are right there. But after this 6-game stretch is over, including the home game with the Clippers, we're gonna know a lot more about this team. And I don't think anybody this season has had to face this kind of competition back to back to back to back. But tonight, I like them quite a bit. And when we started the show, we had this thing. And, Phoenix Suns, 8 o'clock tonight. You're going to bet on teams that are coming off 3 consecutive games that had 220 or more combined points scored in each one. And by the way, 111 is the league average, so that's where the 220 comes from. It's rounded off. I could say 222, and the results would be the same. And the betting line is within 3.5 points on either side of pick, and the team is facing an elite opponent that is outscoring their opponents by an average of at least 6 per game. Past 3 seasons, and the reason I only chose 3 seasons because 4 seasons ago we were averaging 106 in the league. Now we're averaging 111 each of the last 3 seasons. So those 3 seasons combined for a 32-10 straight-up record, 33-9 against the spread for a whopping 78.6. And that tells us to bet on the Suns and don't even bother watching the game because we already know the result. So, Rob, you start us off with this one. You share my bullish enthusiasm, or am I just showing you irrational exuberance?
Well, we talked an awful lot about it on the NBA tip-off show. I mean, I kind of came from the perspective of the total, John, more than I did the side in this game. Both of these teams are off of miserable losses. And it's interesting that Phoenix loses a couple nights ago, 111-85 to the Spurs in a game where head coach Popovich and the Spurs organization actually got fined. They got fined for violating the rest rules because you're not allowed to rest 3 or more players, just 4 rest. And they started a team full of backups, and they go into Phoenix, and they win by 26. So you'd expect the Suns to bounce back here with a better effort tonight. I mean, I know it was pointed out on the show that maybe it was a bit of a look ahead. I'm not sure, but I'll say this. In their last 8 games, the Phoenix Suns, a team that's been predicated on defense all season long. In fact, when the season began, their head coach, Monty Williams, had a catchphrase called "Be a pest on every possession." And Chris Paul led that team to believe in the defensive end of the floor. But the last 8 games, 5 times they've given up 50% or better from the field. And that's not good if you're the Phoenix Suns. Now, it could be a product of the condensed schedule. And maybe there's some fatigue in the legs of the Phoenix Suns, and they're not playing as good a defense. But if you do that tonight against Milwaukee, a team that's going to get regularly 115, 118, 125 against almost everybody, then you're going to have to outscore them, which Phoenix is totally capable of. Milwaukee has not been a defensive juggernaut by any sense of the imagination. I mean, their defensive rating, efficiency rating, is kind of misleading because they do give up a ton of points, but the efficiency rating is top 10. I likened it, John, to football defenses that have air raid offenses. You know, you score so quick and your defense is back on the field, and there's so many possessions and so many plays in a game that you do give up points. That's kind of what Milwaukee is. They score so easily, they score so quickly that they're going to give up points on their end. It was 233 earlier. I see 234s now. But I think if I had to play the game, I'd probably play it over in some form. I'd like to be getting a couple more points with Phoenix because Milwaukee's off a horrible loss as well. Memphis walked in there and beat this team 128-115 the other night. I think you'll get good efforts out of both. I think there'll be a lot of points scored in that game.
And before we get to Adam here, Phoenix ranks 5th in the NBA defending the three-pointer, allowing 35% shooting. But they've given up 41 or more percent they gave up 41% to the Spurs, as you mentioned. The Suns ranked 4th in the league in scoring defense, though, 107.8 per game. But now they've given up 111 league average or more in 3 of the last 4 games. Now, do you think this is one of those anomalies, and then they'll play a much better defensive game tonight? Not saying that they can play good defense and it can still go 240 because of the way the efficiency ratings work. But it seems like the mismatch, and I heard you say this on the NBA show today, that Milwaukee scores a lot of their points easily in the paint, and that's where Phoenix's defense is probably the weakest. Phoenix defends the 3 very, very well, but that's not going to be really required against this Milwaukee Bucks team. So there, I agree with the over, but do you think the Suns' defense is actually changed and is in trouble, or is it going to revert back to the way they were?
That's the million-dollar question, John, because I think you're this deep into the season with only 16 games left, and they're playing games right on top of each other. I could see a fatigue factor here being the realistic answer to why Phoenix is giving up better than 50% field goals 5 of the last 8. It's not characteristic of the way they played the season, but you get this late, and if you have, it's not a deep rotation. I mean, there may be 8, 9 guys, and they haven't had a lot of injury on this team, so these same guys have played a lot of minutes. And if you're going to walk into Milwaukee, a team from an offensive efficiency standpoint, I don't know if they're number 1 in offensive efficiency, but they're going to be 1, 2, or 3.
Yep.
It's tough if you're tired at this point in time. Perhaps you talked about this road trip, right? If we're going to project ahead, perhaps by the end of the road trip, the legs are really tired and you cash a couple of overs. But I just don't think this is the type of team you want to start your road trip with, because they're so good offensively, and Phoenix may be a little bit worn down on the defensive side. Let's not forget that they do have a bunch of really good three-point shooters on that Milwaukee team. I mean, that's their whole gimmick.
Yep.
Drive and dish. I don't think DiVincenzo plays tonight, but the rest of them are in. So we'll see how it goes. But again, I think Phoenix can match them point for point. Phoenix has really picked it up on the offensive end. So to me, it looks like a high-scoring affair. We'll see how it turns out.
Adam, you want to chime in with any other pertinent facts here?
I think you guys covered it really well, and I didn't make an NBA bet tonight. I'm not going to make an NBA bet. I will say this: the Bucks have been a fade for me lately. I think I just question how interested they are in this regular season stretch. I guess from here to the playoffs, they tend to rest guys. Budenholzer will play his whole team. I mean, they'll play everyone, and it's really tough to gauge, when they're going to play all their starters, how many minutes the bench they're going to give to the bench. They're in that spot in the Eastern Conference where they've got a pretty big gap between them and the rest of the pack. So I think they can, with minimal effort, they're going to coast to either first, second, or third. We'll probably call it third because I have a hard time thinking that they're going to catch up with the Nets or 76ers. So, and I like the Suns team. I've liked them all year. They're a team I've looked to play on this year. So slight lean, Suns with the points for me. And really just comes down to the fact that I've been fading the Bucks. I'll probably continue to look to fade the Bucks unless they really start. I know they kind of snapped out of it. I guess really, if you look at their 3-game winning streak, the only real convincing win for me was them beating the Hawks because the other 2 wins were against the Timberwolves and Magic, who are 2 of the worst teams in the league. And prior to that, it was relatively uninspired from them for almost the entire start of April. So again, I don't have. It's not something I'm going to bet, but I agree with you, John. I don't hate the Suns with the points here.
I like it. Let's move over to another marquee game, and I guess it would be even marquee if the 2 superstars were playing. But we have the Lakers hosting the Utah Jazz. And now I think the Jazz are starting to feel a little bit of pressure coming up from the Clippers and the Suns. And as we said, this 5-game road trip is going to dictate what seed Phoenix is. And if they do extraordinarily well and shock everybody, they could come out of this in first place. That's going to be a monumental effort. However, we're looking at this Lakers game here at the Staples Center. Lakers are 7-point underdogs. And this is something, Adam, we've talked about on the show, and I have to give credit to a buddy of mine who I just know. He's not on any website. He's just an analytics guy. He has a full-time job, but he also is a pretty astute database sports guy, Austin Wang. And he pointed me in this direction, so I started putting it in my database. And did you know that when the under is 215 points or less in this season, the under has won 52-27. 52 wins, 27 losses. That's like 65%. Just blindly betting 215 and under on the under. I'm not done yet. The over. When lines are 235 and over, the human nature would be like, oh, well, they're not going to score that many. I mean, you got to fade it. Well, no, that would have cost you big time because playing the over in games that are 235 or higher is 44-22 with 1 push. That is 67%. Just blindly doing that. Now, this is I believe this is the second of back-to-back, right?
They played on Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. Okay, so when you have 2 teams that have winning records playing each other, and the one team is a home dog, the under is 18-5-2 over the last 3 seasons, and that would be the Lakers and the under. So I passed the baton. Let's go with Adam first this time. You like the Lakers? You like the under? You like both of them? You hate both of them?
Again, I really didn't come up with a ton. I'm really more of a spot player in the NBA. I kind of dip in and dip out. It's probably my least sort of volume sport right now at this time of year. So I'll kind of defer to Rob for a little bit more of a breakdown. But I tend to look at the higher profile games. So this is the ESPN game tonight because I feel like the stars are actually more inclined to play in these games. And you're usually going to get a top effort from teams in these bigger games. So I would slightly lean toward the Lakers here. It's really, again, it's a slight lean. I just think from a spread perspective, I think if you can still get 7, obviously you want to shop around. There are still some 7s out there, and you might see this start to move back in that direction. I think that's a good number to take the Lakers at. They just beat them on Saturday. I know sometimes, I tend to look to go in the other direction sometimes as well, but I still think that this is a little bit of an inflated line. So a very slight lean to the Lakers for me.
Rob, I have a question before you comment on this. The line's +7, right? AD and LeBron are out. Is Utah really that much better? In other words, if this was the game one of the playoffs for the Western Conference Championship at Staples, what do you think the line would be? I mean, it wouldn't be pick'em. And that's where I really think there's some value here in taking the Lakers, even though they're missing their two guys. But now they've been playing so long that the chemistry with this unit and the backup unit is pretty darn good. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I can say this, John, just from my power ratings perspective, I had Utah as a 4-point favorite here. But let's not forget that Utah's missing their top star as well, Donovan Mitchell, obviously out right now for the Utah Jazz. So that kind of takes away from Utah's number. But I made the game Utah 4. I think, it opened maybe 6. It was bet quickly to 6.5 and then to 7 now. So money has carried it to this point. I think a lot of people. And first of all, on Saturday, Rudy Gobert didn't play and Mike Conley didn't play.
Right.
They were rested.
Yep.
Tonight they'll both be back. So there's reason for, money to come in, as we've talked all season long about injuries and then guys coming back off of injuries, how quickly what's so-called smart money just goes that direction with the line. So maybe there's a little bit of overvalue here in Utah. But again, but in the previous game, you talked about Phoenix possibly closing that road trip if they play well in first place. The team that's hanging on to first place right now is Utah. To lose back-to-backs in Los Angeles, probably not on their mind right now. They want to get that game back here tonight. Gobert not at the rim, not protecting the rim Saturday, led to really good Lakers shooting. With him at the rim tonight, they're probably reduced to more of a perimeter team than getting to the bucket. And with Mike Conley Jr., of course, in the backcourt, there's more playmaking ability, more three-point shooting ability. Utah chucked up, I shouldn't say chucked up, but they shot 59 three-pointers the other day. Granted, it was an overtime game, but 59 three-pointers, a lot, and it's a team that shoots them really, really well. They're hard to guard. So, Gobert probably has an interior advantage here in this game now that he's back in on both ends of the floor. And Utah shooting, they did shoot 59, but they made 23. It's what kept them in the game. For me, the ideal play here is to play Utah first half. I think they come out with some sort of vengeance. And with two of their starters back, I think the line for the first half is 3.5. And to ask them to be ahead by 4 points at halftime, I don't think is too much in this particular situation. Where the game lands, I'm not quite sure. Like you said, John, there could be a little bit of overpricing here where Utah is concerned. But again, money carried it that way. I think the best way to play this is probably Utah first half. The game the other day, by the way, scored 220 points in regulation. And to your totals point of games staying under the number of 215 with this one priced at 214, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Is Rudy Gobert defensively worth enough to drag this game back down to under 214, or does Rudy Gobert's offense and Mike Conley's offense make it another 220 game? That's a hard question to answer. But I think Utah first half minus 3.5 probably a good way to go.
I like that. I like that bet quite a bit. And it might be one to do in game too in that total, with it being as low as it is. Yeah, you could. I have to do the numbers in my head like I always do, but you're seeing it at what now? 214, 214.5.
Yeah, I think I saw a stray 215 somewhere, but let me look real quick here, John. At what
Yeah, so
you do see one stray 215, but mostly 214, even a stray 213.5 now. So
yeah,
right
for
in
what
that
it's
14 vicinity.
I think the last what 4 or 5 shows I think our in-game suggestion actually cashed. If I'm adding it up right, maybe somebody in the chat room can tell me I'm wrong, but yeah, all those were in high totals, and then waiting for the high points per minute rate to hit a certain level for 3 minutes, and then you bang the under, which was, I think, every single time was in the 250s. But I think this game, I would prefer the betting the over, because that's the way you guys are leaning too, right?
Well, again, you have to answer the question to yourself. Do you think Gobert's defense is worth more than Gobert and Conley's added offense? Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that. But the other day they did go 220 without either of those guys on the floor. He does bring a big defensive presence, and Los Angeles did get a lot of shots at the rim with him not available. And I don't think Derek Favors was available for that game either. So you're talking about a game where they started Elian Ilisanova as their center, who is not a true center by any stretch of the imagination. So it was easy for Los Angeles to score on Saturday. Will it be as easy tonight? Most likely not.
And by the way, I asked the database here of 3-point attempts for this season. 59 is the season high for the league. And you might be surprised to know that the second highest is the Miami Heat with 56 3-point heaves. And the Trailblazers with 55, Sixers with 55. I guess Ben Simmons must have actually shot one. Adam doesn't know this, but I am the biggest fan of Ben Simmons. Maybe Rob's tied with me. I'm not really sure, but fair to say. But 59 is a ton of 3-point attempts. But I think I'm gonna do this. I think we're gonna try both sides here. I'm expecting the game to start out a little sluggish or maybe cautious. So 205.5 is essentially a one standard deviation off of the 214.5. That's how I come up with these numbers initially, and then they're adjusted by other metrics, and then that has to happen first. If the game doesn't start out sluggish, then there's not going to be a second bet, and the second bet would be to go 223.5 under. So if I can get 205, 223, that gives me an 18-point middle, and I would like that quite a bit. And ideally, you want to get both ends of these in the first half. And if you get late into the third quarter and you can't get that 223.5, then you don't get it. You don't do it in the fourth quarter because you have so little time for that to work. So that is going to be my show play. I think is the 205.5 to 223.5 in game.
There was one other guy. I know you brought up a couple of blind, just NBA trends, and I know it was someone from WagerTalk that posted it. Might have been Ralph, but the double-digit favorites one is pretty crazy too this year. I think just blindly betting double-digit favorites. I know going into the weekend, it was something like 40 and 60. I don't have the exact number, and I was just kind of trying to scroll through my phone and look for it, but it was a pretty big number. I want to say Ralph Michaels might have posted it.
It is. It is a big number. I just asked the database myself, and we always kind of mention SDQL, and that Ralph uses that, and it's a very good database. I use my own, but I also compare it to SDQL because they use a different closing line. So I use closing line. They use like a blended average of the day. There's merit in that too. Closing line, to me, everybody had a chance to get the bet in. That's how the line ended. Reflects all the betting flows, the percentages, whatever. But for this season, double-digit favorites are 90 and 8 straight up, 64-31. ATS with 3 pushes, 67.4% winners, just blindly betting double-digit favorites.
So that would mean your one tonight would be if you have any interest in laying what looks like to be 12.5 now with the Wizards. That would be your one shot at it tonight, which is not something I'm interested in doing. But
to your point, sometimes the ugly situations end up being like sometimes the most powerful ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just did this for the heck of it. We did that 215 under, 235 over. So double-digit favorites, 215 total. So that is 8-4 against the number. And the under is hitting 60%, so we really don't have anything there. But At least worth finding out. Yeah, that's amazing. 67%. I don't think there's ever been a season that's been. Well, if you're interested to know, I can tell you that too.
Well, I mean, it's just like you would think, just because the favorite, a line like that, the favorites are going to generally get steamed up in that direction, and the book's probably shading to want want the action on the favorite, the big double-digit favorite anyway. You just wouldn't expect this far into the season for double-digit NBA favorites to be hitting at that rate. That I feel like it's got to be an anomaly of some sort.
Well, it kind of is. We're 67% now. The second highest season in the last 20. 2018 hit 59%.
Yeah,
big drop, but still very good. I mean, that's outstanding. 2007 is third place, 57%. 2011, 56. 2014, 53. And now you're barely making money from here on out the rest of the 20 years. 2000 was at even 50%. The worst year was 2006, 43%. 2006, 9, and 1998 were all 43%. So I think this is an anomaly, but I'd have to try to play with this because I'm a little worried about the scoring being 111 points per game, which is the highest it's been during this time frame. Rob and I and Tony often kid about the great games of the 1996 season where first team to 81.
Yeah, right.
But this is a totally different game.
So just to real quick on that double-digit trend, I would almost maybe to look to go against it from here on out.
Maybe in the playoffs.
Just from now until the playoffs.
Yep.
I'm just going to use today's game as an example, Wizards Thunder, and I'm going to, this is obviously just one game, but I have a feeling this might, this isn't, this is starting to get a little traction. I've heard someone else mention it as well. So this opened 11, which was already probably a line that was shaded, and it's now up to 12.5. So at what point does it just make sense to just, take the 12.5 or take the points, because you're probably getting a line that already had a little of value. And if you just wait and let the people do their thing, I mean, you're probably going to get better line value from here on out on those dogs than the plays that made up that subset that we're sitting here saying, well, it hits at 67%. So I almost would I'd be interested to see if this point forward, wouldn't be that surprised if you made some money just going the other way on that sort of trend from this point forward, especially with teams probably more willing to rest guys, playing more meaningless games. You're going to see some of these, bigger favorites probably go deeper in rotations as the games get less meaningful, wanting to get to the playoffs healthy. So just a thought.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I'll do one more here on the fly. What I did here was double-digit favorites that have a win percentage of 65% or better, playing a team with a 35% win percentage or worse. So you have the best against the worst. Theory being that it flip-flops after the All-Star break, so that's another parameter. 2020 so far, those double-digit favorites are 10-3, and that actually just has the p-value is actually suggesting that our theory is right, that you want to take these ugly dogs of double digits against the powerful favorite from here on out. There's really nothing close to this. Everything else is pretty even. Yeah, I mean,
it's interesting.
More times than not, with the full season, the dogs after the All-Star break, the double-digit dogs have a win percentage of 35, playing an elite team, actually have done well. It's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, hope everybody's still awake.
John, they get tricky and they get situational at this time of year. I'm trying to think back, but let me just go with the Washington-Oklahoma City example because it's the only one tonight. At this point in the season, when you have 15, 16 left, and you got to treat them all individual because Oklahoma City's clearly in tank mode. I mean, the fact that they're not playing Lou Dort tonight is ridiculous. I saw one website called that a tank violation. Lou Dort has scored 80 points in the last 3 games for OKC, and he must be doing too well because they had a day off for rest, and all of a sudden Lou Dort can't play tonight. So Oklahoma City, clearly, the youth movement started 3 weeks ago. Yes, they're playing hard, but no, they're not necessarily trying to win basketball games here. The players on the floor probably are, but management, keeping all these guys on the bench, probably isn't, right? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, another 2 weeks we'll re-examine him, so on and so forth. Al Horford, you don't play the rest of the year. And Washington, on the other hand, has been a point spread juggernaut for about the last 10 days. Now, problem with Washington is when's the last time they laid 12.5?
I was just going to say, I can't.
They don't lay that type of number. But they're a team, when we go back to the Utah game, where they were plus 10.5 7-9 days ago, and they got pressed at the end of that game. It's a game generally that Washington would cough up, and they didn't. They held on. They played tough, and ever since then they've covered every spread. They're looking to get into that 7-10 play-in game. Beginning of the season, they came with expectations when they got Russell Westbrook. They considered themselves a playoff team, and now they're healthy. They've got that chance. Davis Bertans comes back. So again, the question becomes, the power ratings I have showed they should have been 11. The opening number was right. Again, money carried it to 12.5 because people playing against the tank situation, I guess, or even the Lou Dort injury situation. Well, he's out. We have to go play Washington. The overreaction there. But the other side of that coin, to your point about playing the ugly dogs, is Phoenix the other night. Phoenix is 12.5 over San Antonio with nobody playing, and they get beat by 26. Those are the kind of things you're referring to, where the one team is so clearly so much better. They're in the playoffs no matter what, and the other team has no chance whatsoever, right? And they win by 26. I think, I don't know if Milwaukee was 10 against the Grizzlies the other night. They might not have been. They might have been 8.5, 9, something in that vicinity. But they also, again, get beat. To Adam's earlier point of Milwaukee maybe coasting because they're in a situation where they're not going to get beat out of the 3rd seed. When you're playing the dogs, those are the ones you're looking for, not necessarily the Oklahoma Cities of the world who are trying to lose as much as the other team's trying to win. But the thing that comes into play with Washington is 12.5. Can they win by more than 12.5? They did the other night. They beat the Bulls 121-107, won by 14. You could probably see a similar score here. A lot of action on this total toward the over. And Oklahoma City, obviously, they gave up 140 to Golden State last week. I think they've been 0 defensively for the past month. So, they're just situational. They're tricky.
Well, you asked the Wizards being a 12-point favorite at home since all the way back in 1995. It's happened only 23 times, but they're 21-2 straight up, 11-12 against the spread, 14-9 over. This is obviously the first time in 2020, right. And let's see, 2018 they had 1 game, 2017 1 game, 16 1 game, 15 2 games, 14 4 games, but.
Not a situation they're accustomed to being in.
I can tell you this, though, that works really. This is one of those betting systems that would probably have Joe Ranieri's head blow off his neck, but at least his eyes would get like this. But you guys will understand this. I mean, it's not a big deal. All right, so you're going to play against home double-digit favorites. After a blowout win of 15 points or more and facing an opponent after they scored 55 or more points in the first half of the last 2 games. Over the last 3 seasons, 34-9 against the spread. And that favors Oklahoma City. So maybe we're on to something. Reminds me of my Oral Roberts bet. Long story short, Adam, Rob and I were ready to go on this show. Oral Roberts and Ohio State. Ohio State was winning by 2. There was, a minute 10 to go in the game, Rob, or something? Minute 30?
Yeah, right there. Yep, right in that vicinity.
And we're waiting for Tony. And 2 Tony's credit, not being ready to go was great because we really don't have a set time we go anyways. Everybody knows. And I go, oh my God. And Rob, look at this. Ohio State minus 1,000 to win 100, and they're winning by 2. And without even saying it, we both knew that Oral Roberts was the best free throw shooting team in the nation. And how many times did I say to you, Rob, like, am I being a nut job taking this right now with 1:20 to go, down 2, and I got plus, what was it, 625, I think?
Yeah, and we knew that Ohio State had blown huge leads in the Big Ten tournament, all 3 games, right? And they were about to choke away another one. So it was a great bet at a price that you wouldn't even imagine they'd give you. And sure enough, Oral Roberts wins, and it's a ticket cash. It was a great bet.
Yeah, and then I put it on Twitter. It was a Saturday. No, it was Friday. I put it on Twitter on Saturday, and then the betting gods got me. I went 0-3 Sunday. So you just don't, just don't brag. Don't brag. But I do like this Oklahoma City system here because they're coming off. Washington is not a juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. And they're favored by a ton when they're normally not favored by a ton. And they're coming off this blowout win. Man alive. Could you imagine if we wake up tomorrow and Oklahoma City wins?
I mean, I think it comes down to kind of what Rob was saying. It's going to come down to what kind of effort this Thunder team gives tonight and that's probably the toughest part of the whole handicap here is, you already mentioned Dort is out. So, at what point they're playing younger guys. At what point do they start to, does it happen tonight? Do they start to figure it out a little bit and put a competitive game together? Lose by 9? I mean, that's probably what it would take. But then again, it's the NBA. The Wizards going out and laying an egg would not overly surprise me. So
I just noticed that there's only 3 wins difference between these two teams. And let's see, wins minus opponent wins. So that would put me -3. So I went at 3 or less in season.
Yep, it looks like the Wizards have a game in hand maybe. Oh, yeah. So they played 1 less game, but yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so I screwed this up. Sorry. Ralph would probably do this faster. Probably, maybe not. Okay, so double-digit dogs that have 3 or fewer wins total after the All-Star break since 2018 are 1-7. So now that destroys my idea of taking the Thunder. I thought I was going to come up with something magical like 12-0. But, I mean, it's just one little combination of parameters. But you can see in this little case study we're doing here that, if I sat here for 20 minutes, I could give you some really powerful systems that support both teams. And then it requires more than just doing systems, stuff like Adam and Rob are talking about the fundamentals, how are they doing recently, how have they done for the season, what is the true character of the team, and then you put that all together, and then you have something. But
that's why you have to look at both sides of a game, John. One-sided handicaps just don't work. To Adam's point before about OKC, their head coach has praised their effort. At least my guys come and give me 48 minutes, and they do. But they're so young, and it's not a good shooting team. You go through all the offensive metrics and find that they're one of the worst shooting teams in the NBA. And on any night, they could run out there and give you 95. And 95 against the Wizards not going to work because they're going to give you 120. And when you add in the fact that the 3-game win separation between both, when you play a dozen or more games without Bradley Beal, when you've played a dozen or more games without Russell Westbrook, they just, like the Nets, like so many teams in the NBA, they haven't been whole until now. And that's why you see the spurt out of them, because they're whole at this point in time. And it's a different team. But again, they just don't lay 12.5. That's the problem. You run up. I can build a great fundamental case for the Wizards. And then I have to stop and ask myself, but can they cover 12.5? Because it's still not a good defensive team. they're like a sieve on the defensive end. So tough to trust guys like that. You know, we wind up with 128, 116 final. That's a common Wizards game,
Yeah.
It is.
and it's an OKC cover.
I just did another one. I can't control myself, but Las Vegas Chris would love this if he saw me typing away like a madman. But win percentage less than 50% is the Wizards, right? And the Wizards have won 4 of their last 5, and they're double-digit favorites. They are 34-13-1 against the spread for 72% winners since 1995. Those situations, not just the Wizards, any team. Any losing record team that's won 4 of the last 5 and now double-digit favorite, 34-13-1. And most of those games are going to be home, but let's just see what happens. Well, it's 32-12-1 for 73% winners when at home. So there, I gave a system on the Wizards, system on OKC, and the people in the chat room can take whoever they want.
Yeah.
I don't have to apologize. Rob's never seen me like this. I feel unrestricted right now.
It's the life of a sports better handicapper every day when we go through these games. You have to try and build the cases for both sides and then put yourself in the best position to win. And sometimes there is no best position. Those are the ones you let go. You know, and this one is probably best let go from a side perspective, totals perspective. Perhaps you could look over in any Wizards game, but and that's just what you just did there, John, for the audience is really good insight into what we go through handicapping and betting the board every single day of the. It's not easy. Hey, you can look at something and, oh my God, I love that, and run to the window and bet it. But if you don't examine the other side, you're going to be out of business pretty quick. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I mean, we did this on the fly too. This wasn't planned for part of the show. But much like in football, college football, the machine learning stuff that I run, it focuses on 28 points. So a lot of your top 10 teams score more than 28 points a game, and when they do, it usually results in a favorable outcome for the ATS result too. And then in the NBA, it's above the league average, which is 111. So I'm just going to do this just for fun, and then I promise this will be the last one. Because I see Adam rubbing his eyes here a little bit.
I think not.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. So here we are. Teams scoring 111 points, and this is the most common factors between 2 parameters, and only 2. So they score more 111 or more, and they have the better assist to turnover ratio than the opponent in the game. So I'm only doing this for 2020. And I think the results will probably be pretty obvious. The Milwaukee Bucks, when they score 111 and have the better assist to turnover ratio than the opponent, are 16-4 against the spread, 17-3 straight up. The best team, believe it or not, is Cavaliers. They're 7-0 against the number when they've done it, so they haven't done it very often. The Knicks, that has to be a mistake. No, I'm kidding. They're 9-0 against the spread, 8-0 for the Magic. The Thunder are 9-0. Pistons 13-1, Clippers 21-3, Warriors 22-4. Now, I'll give you some of the worst teams. So we have. And when you have to understand when these 2 metrics, these 2 parameters collide, the ATS win percentage is always above 50%. So the worst team is the Timberwolves, 7-6, Pacers 13-11, Kings 14-11, Raptors 15-9, Nets 14-8, Suns 19-10. And the Nets don't play defense, but that makes sense to me. Okay, I'm done.
Real quick, John, you were talking about assist to turnover ratio, and you had a number with the Bucks, but I think if, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would pretty much swear on it. Phoenix is the best assist to turnover team in the NBA this year, and that's who plays the Bucks tonight. The addition of Chris Paul, they've had some outrage. I think they had a 36-3 one night, assisted turnovers. Just crazy the way they've taken care of the ball and passed it around since he got there. And guys have to make shots, otherwise you don't get any assists. But
yep. Let's see what it comes up with here. I can quick do that too, I think. We need the Jeopardy music.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers.
Let me just do one little tweak here. I think it's tricky because you want the season right now, and a lot of times it'll give you every single game by team, and that's not what we're after here. It's not working. Let me try one last thing, and then we'll bag this idea. No, it's still... I'll do that for tomorrow. But I guess it's a little after 6. Should we just go around the horn real quick, 30 seconds or less, with our best bets? I started out with the best bet, 205.5 to 223.5. That's betting over 205.5, under 223.5 in the Lakers game. Adam, what's your best bet today, or your best lean even?
No, I'll give it. So I'm on a really good baseball run right now, 7-1 in my last 8, and I have a play up for $9 on Sports Memo tonight, but I'm in a good mood, so I'm just going to give it out right here. So
good for you.
So I am on the under, the Rays Royals under tonight. It's under 7.5. Still a fine number here. I know that this overnight might have been like 8 some places, but it's been 7.5 since this morning. I think that's the key number. So I don't think I'm really, I know that potentially overnight I could have got a better number, but I'm comfortable with 7.5 here. And so I'll start this off. We'll work backwards. We'll start with the bullpens. The Rays right now, if you look at their bullpen, has a 5.16 ERA, and it's one of the worst bullpens in the league. And I think someone said, I think Rob said earlier, in regards to the Yankees, if you drop their 5-10 run in the middle of the season somewhere, no one's getting up in arms about it. And it's kind of the way I look at the Rays bullpen. I mean, I don't know if they're elite like they were last year. I know that they have a guy out. They have, it's not the exact same bullpen that they had last year, but it's similar, and they've just underperformed to this point. So I'm a big things are going to trend back toward the mean guy when it comes to baseball. And I just would be really surprised if that bullpen continues with a 5+ ERA. I think there's just too many good arms in that bullpen.
I agree.
Continue. And that would bring us to the starter. So Josh Fleming is the starter tonight, and his career, we're only about 8 games into his career. So the sample size is small, but for the most part, he was really good in the action he was in last year. 2.78 ERA, 1.08 WHIP last season, and the funny thing is, the thing that Kevin Cash got all sorts of heat for, which was taking Blake Snell out when he got to a certain pitch count or a certain scenario in that game, in the game, and it backfired. It's something that he does with just about all of his pitchers. And I like the fact that Josh Fleming knows he's probably, if he's got average to poor stuff, he's probably only going through the order once. And if his stuff is decent, he's maybe only going through the order twice. So, he's not going to leave him out there. He's probably only going to go 4 or 5 innings. But then you're getting the ball to a Rays bullpen that should be looking to redeem themselves after a tough first 15, 16 games into the season. On the other side of the ball, you have Danny Duffy. This guy just won't leave me alone. I feel like I end up, for the last 5 years, I'm constantly on Danny Duffy. I don't know if it's because I was on him in his breakout year, but anyway, so far he's looked awesome. 2 starts, he's given up 1 earned run in 12 innings. He's got a 0.75 ERA and a 1.17 WHIP. I don't think that will necessarily continue, but I also don't think this Rays lineup is quite as good as they were last year. John, we talked before the season. I said I leaned Rays win total under because they had some unproven guys in spots where, like Randy Arozarena, for example, it kind of came out of nowhere last year. Now he's expected to produce. So I'm not sold on the Rays offense, and I actually do like this Royals bullpen. I think Stalmont is awesome. Holland has been decent. They've got some good arms, and they're statistically, I want to say they're in the top half, at least right now, in most bullpen metrics. So it looks like a low number, but I think we could get decent performances from both starters, and I actually like the bullpens here. Rays offensively, average to below average in pretty much every category so far, and I would say the Royals are probably a middle of the pack offensive team at best. I think 7.5 is the key number in this situation. A 3-3 game might end 4-3. So that is my best bet today. Under 7.5, Royals Rays. It's the only bet I made for Monday. And there you go.
Love it. Love it. Rob, what do you have for us tonight?
Yeah, I'm just going to real quick because Adam made a good point about not going too crazy with bullpen ERA, especially early in the year. But a great example of it is, the White Sox go out and spend all that money to acquire Liam Hendriks, who falls flat on his face his first 3 efforts. And since then, he's picked up a couple of saves, and I think he's given up 1 hit in his last 3 outings. So these things generally regress to the mean. Don't get too crazy in April. I think a lot of bettors out there overreact to what happens in early April. And you just have to let these things play out. But for what I'll use the same best bet I used on the NBA tip-off show, John, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies plus 7.5 here against the Denver Nuggets tonight. This game opens 3.5. It goes up to 7.5 on the news that Jonas Valanciunas is out of the game for Memphis because he's in concussion protocol. So the game immediately flies 4 points, more than double what the line opened at. And what goes unnoticed is Monte Morris out for the Denver Nuggets. And I bring that up only because 3 weeks ago, the 4 guys responsible for the ball handling for the Denver Nuggets were Jamal Murray, Gary Harris Jr., Monte Morris, and Facundo Campazzo. Well, only one of those 4 still stands. Harris traded, Murray hurt, Monte Morris hurt. Campazzo's the only point guard on this team tonight. So while there's an advantage, Jokic with no Valanciunas, there's a huge advantage, Ja Morant against Campazzo, a guy who was only playing 15 minutes a game, has been upped to 26 minutes a game, and should be hounded by the Memphis backcourt for almost, 35 to 38 minutes tonight because there's no backup point guard. Marcus Howard from Marquette, I guess, would be the next guy in. So I think those 2 injuries negate each other, and one's really valued a ton more than the other one is.
Yep.
But the perimeter for Memphis should be in good shape here tonight, while the interior good for Denver. Memphis 8-2 last 10 road games. They've labeled themselves road warriors. They take a lot of pride in winning on the road. They're 4-1 against the spread as a road dog inside that 10-game span. I think there's a lot of reason that this price is just, John, I give this best bet also because we talk an awful lot in this show about the overreaction to injuries. And hey, the Grizzlies plus 7.5 could lose, but what a great price. I mean, more than double the opener.
Yep.
In a situation where the other team has an injury that helps them just as much as their injury helps the other side. Denver, like I say, weak in the backcourt here. So give me Memphis, a team trying to get into that, advance their position in the playoffs, plus 7.5, and a hot team at that. I'll take them here tonight, plus the points.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Great show between the 3 of us, and tomorrow we'll look forward to being here again at 4:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the April 20th edition of Manny's Pub. I love that name. Absolutely love that name. Manny's a great, great Red Fox Lab, and he's my dog. But for Rob Veno and Adam of Top Flight Sports, thanks for being on the show, Adam. And myself, may all the wins be yours.